In 2019, WeWork was one of the most valuable startups on Earth. Investors poured billions of dollars into the company. Its founder, Adam Neumann, was treated like a visionary genius. Some people believed WeWork could completely change the future of work itself. But behind the scenes, the company was burning money at a catastrophic rate. Private jets, alcohol-fueled parties, cult-like leadership, and one of the strangest corporate cultures Silicon Valley had ever seen. Then, almost overnight, the entire empire collapsed. At first, WeWork looked like a brilliant idea. The concept was simple. Instead of renting an entire office, startups and freelancers could rent stylish shared workspaces, modern furniture, free coffee, open spaces, networking events. It wasn't just selling offices, it was selling a lifestyle. And in the early 2010s, that lifestyle became incredibly attractive, especially in cities like New York, San Francisco, and London, where office space was expensive and startup culture was exploding. WeWork grew incredibly fast. By 2014, the company was already expanding across the world. Investors loved the story. Young founder, big vision, massive market, and most importantly, unlimited ambition. At the center of it all was Adam Neumann, a charismatic Israeli entrepreneur with enormous confidence and even bigger promises. Neumann didn't talk like a normal CEO. He talked like a revolutionary. He claimed WeWork wasn't just a real estate company. It was a movement, a company that would elevate the world's consciousness. And somehow, investors believed him, especially one investor in particular, SoftBank. The Japanese investment giant led by billionaire Masayoshi Son. Son became obsessed with Neumann's vision. During one famous meeting, Son reportedly told him, "Be crazier." And that single mindset would eventually help create one of the biggest startup disasters in modern history. But behind the image of a revolutionary company, serious problems were beginning to appear. WeWork was losing enormous amounts of money. The company signed long-term leases and spent billions designing luxury office spaces, but many of those offices were barely profitable. Still, Adam Neumann continued spending aggressively. Private jets, massive parties, luxury real estate. At one point, Neumann even trademarked the word "we" and reportedly sold it back to the company for nearly $6 million. Inside the company, the culture became increasingly bizarre. Employees described a cult-like atmosphere. There were reports of heavy drinking, wild parties, and chaotic management. But investors kept pouring money into WeWork, because as long as the valuation kept rising, nobody wanted to ask difficult questions. In 2019, WeWork finally prepared to go public. And for the first time, investors got a closer look at the company's finances. What they found was shocking. WeWork was losing billions of dollars. Its business model looked deeply unstable, and Adam Neumann's behavior began raising serious concerns. The company's IPO filing revealed bizarre details about how WeWork operated. Private deals, conflicts of interest, massive personal loans, and a CEO who seemed completely out of control. Almost overnight, investor confidence collapsed. The company's valuation fell from $47 billion to less than $10 billion, and the entire world watched the disaster unfold in real time. After the failed IPO, WeWork began collapsing rapidly. Employees lost their jobs, investors lost billions of dollars, and the company's reputation was destroyed. But Adam Neumann walked away incredibly wealthy. Reports suggested he received over $1 billion through stock sales, loans, and exit packages. To many people, it felt absurd. The man who helped create the disaster was rewarded for it. Meanwhile, WeWork desperately tried to survive. The company cut costs, closed offices, and laid off thousands of employees. 5. What was once seen as the future of work had become one of Silicon Valley's biggest embarrassments. In many ways, WeWork became the perfect symbol of an era in Silicon Valley. An era where hype became more important than reality, where founders were treated like celebrities, and where investors were so afraid of missing the next big thing that they stopped asking basic questions. For years, money flooded into companies that promised to change the world. But in the end, many of those companies were built on unsustainable business models, endless optimism, and massive amounts of borrowed money. WeWork wasn't just the collapse of a company. It was the collapse of an illusion. And even today, the story still feels almost unbelievable. A company once valued at $47 billion nearly collapsed under the weight of its own hype. And one man managed to walk away a billionaire anyway.